This morning, I'm going to briefly go over how I find great tenant buyers. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through. I'm not going to talk today about how to qualify them. That's a next step in the process, which we'll be talking about next week in terms of specific things I do to qualify them. But rather today, it's going to be more of what am I doing to, find the top tenant buyers for my properties, or if I'm finding them a property. And so, like I said, Facebook isn't working for me on my computer, so I can't show you my slide deck. So I'm going to describe stuff to you, and hopefully you can capture it in your mind's eye. So when I look for a tenant buyer for a property, or if I'm looking for a tenant buyer that I want to help them find a house, I will just start by putting some really basic information out there about the rent-to-own program. And so what I'm doing is, if you're on the last couple of weeks, you've seen my funnel that I've talked about, that I find investors to invest, as well as to find tired, frustrated landlords. So the last 2 weeks I talked about those funnels. Same funnel again at the top. You've got how do you market to these tenant buyers? How do you find them? That's a very common question I get. How do you find them? And you know what? It's quite easy. They're everywhere. It's getting the top tier tenant buyers that requires a little bit more work and focus. So I'll start with any number of things. I will start with a post on Facebook or Facebook Marketplace, my website, my Facebook page for my rent-own company, or if I've got a house, I'll put a sign up out front. And these are all just ways of getting people's attention. When you're driving down the street and you see one of those blowy guys in front of, it's just to grab your attention, to show that there's something there that they want you to look at. That's what this is. You're just looking to get it out there to as many people as possible. And ultimately, you want to get it to the point where you've got systems in place that you have several steps in the process for finding a great tenant buyer that you don't have to be involved in, because you've already kind of worked out all the glitches. You've worked out all the kind of the key questions you're looking for. But when you start out, you need to put in the reps of having a lot of conversations. And these conversations can be, a minute long. It might be one text. It might be one message on Facebook Messenger. That's fine. That's all a touch. So that's great. You need to do that. So when I had a property that I put a street sign in front, it was a fairly busy road, and I got hundreds. So these hundreds of inquiries, most of them were duds. Basically, the sign had my logo on it. It clearly says rent to own, and then my phone number. And so, people now, that was back in, early 2010s. People are texting a lot more. So when I put that sign up now, I get less phone calls, more texts, which is great. But I would have people asking questions like, I want to rent to own that house. It looks beautiful. And most of those people weren't qualified because they either didn't have enough of a down payment or they didn't have enough income. So when I'm looking for this tenant buyer that I'm looking for, it's about how do I get as many people in there and have quick conversations with them, right? So ultimately, when I'm talking with someone, or if they won't talk to me on the phone and it's text or messaging or whatever, first of all, I start off with, hi, how you doing? That sort of stuff. And because you want to start building rapport with these people. You want to start building rapport with these future tenant buyers. And you want to find out as much about them as possible. And you want to go through it as quickly as possible. The problem is that building rapport takes time. And, ultimately that first phone call, I just want to know, what's your income and how much of a down payment do you have? Because if you don't have any down payment, and if your income is like this level and where I need a minimum of this level, there's really not much I can do to help you. But I can't start off with those two questions. Hi, this is Cam. Yeah, we got a rental house. Okay, how much do you make? Great. How much do you have, like how much money do you have for a down payment? Okay. Most people get turned off by that blunt of a question. So what I'll do is when I talk to them on the phone, first of all, I'll say, great. So do you understand how rent-to-own works? And most of the time they'll say, sort of. And then I'll say, well, basically what we do, and this is my elevator pitch. Basically what we do is we help families and individuals who can afford mortgage payments, but cannot yet qualify for a mortgage. Does that make sense? Okay, great. And also what we do is we help you save up for a down payment and, by putting some money down up front, and we help you build or repair your credit score over approximately 3 years. Does that make sense? And so people will generally say, yeah, makes sense. And that just kind of is a framework for them in terms of what this is about. So right away up front, I've told them that they need to have money to put down. If they've read the ad, they've seen that, the rent is $1,500 or $2,200 or whatever the number is. And so that's the start of it. And then I'll say, okay, that's great that you understand. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? So I've got this questionnaire that is basically 17 questions that ultimately I go through. But there's 2 and then 5 questions. So the 2 I've already told you, basically, what is your income and how much of a down payment do you have, right? But I can't lead with those. I got to lead with some soft questions, right? Have you ever owned a home before? Yes or no? Okay, so that generates some discussion and okay, cool. Have you ever been through bankruptcy or foreclosure or anything like that? No, I'm in a consumer proposal. That's a very common one that I'll hear. So that's okay, that's good. And the other thing that I'm ultimately looking for is how much money do they make annually, but I'm building to that, right? So out of these 17 questions, I've got 5 or 6 highlighted, that those are kind of the ones that I'm going through that are softer questions, but lead to ultimately what I'm going through. Ultimately, the information that I need to help get them to the next step. So I want to go through these, as quickly as possible, because if I'm talking to, 20 people in a day, I don't want to take 5 minutes for each phone call. That's going to be a lot of time. So a lot of these phone calls are quite a bit shorter. So as soon as I get to the spot where, I find out their income, and often, people are on, government assistance as their income. It's like, sorry, we can't help you because the banks won't ultimately qualify you for a mortgage because they don't count that as income. And so, I'll just kind of let them off that way and move on. But if they've got good income or decent income that meets my basic criteria, and then, how much money do you have for a down payment? Oh, okay, you don't have anything. Okay. But what's going on in my mind so far is that, the conversation with these people, it's good. I understand where they're coming from. They seem quality. They're someone like I want to work with initially, there's all these steps. But so then I'll say, okay, well, do you have any other source of coming up with a down payment? Do you have a tax return coming up? Oh yeah, I do actually. It's I should be getting around $7,000. Okay, well that's good. Or if I go through that and they really have no money, it's like, do you have friends or family who could help you with that down payment? And oh, maybe or maybe not. Another question I'll ask is, do you have anything else of value that you could trade in for this down payment, right? Like a car, an extra car that you're not really using, or a motorcycle or a boat, an RV, what's something that you're looking for? You're looking to get a quad, you lead with that. You have a quad. Because then what you can do is they can trade that into you. You get a professional appraisal and you document it, and that becomes their down payment for the rental and property. So that's a great way to help people think outside of the box of how they can come up for a down payment, because that they've already got the income. So at that point, I've got some really good information, and a couple of the other questions are, what's your credit rating, and so through these questions, like, have you ever owned a home before? That will tell you a lot. Yeah, we did own a home before. Oh, okay. Why don't you own it now? And oh, we were sick, or we lost it, or got divorced. That's a very common one. Relationship breakdown. And so, I've got another 10 or 11 questions here, but I've got the key information that I need to know if we can go to the next step with them. So now we can go in two ways. Either I've got a home that I can show them, or two or three, or I can get them to the point where I can find these guys a home. So most of the time I do house first, just because that's worked very well for me. I also have done, and just trying to think if I've got any current clients that are in tenant first, but tenant first. So if I do tenant first now, then basically the next step would be to get them to fill out some more information, to dig deeper in terms of where they actually are at. If I've got a house that I'm showing, then I want to meet these clients at the house. If it's a tenant first, then okay, let's meet up for coffee. I like doing that in person, just because you really get to know someone in person rather than over the phone or text or whatever. And then so this is a part of the funnel where you've done your elevator pitch. They're interested. You're interested in them. Let's now meet for coffee. And it might not be coffee if it's at a house you're showing. So now I meet them at the house that I'm showing for my house first model, and hey, nice to meet you. Get them in there. Now I'll put an asterisk on that when I meet them at the house. So I'll come back to that asterisk. Hopefully I remember. But now I get to meet them in person, and oftentimes it'll be a couple people showing up, their partner or maybe their kids or their parents or whatever, and show them the house, build rapport, find something in common. They've got kids, you've got kids, they don't have kids, you don't have kids. They've got a car that you're interested in. Oh, that Jeep, that's a really nice Jeep. I've been looking at Jeeps, or I'm interested in Jeeps. Tell me more about your Jeep. Whatever. Find something, that they're interested in. Their kid came with them and they're in their soccer uniform or their basketball uniform. Chat with the kid. Anyways, you're building rapport with them. You're walking them through the house, and they're asking questions. You're explaining stuff, and you're seeing how they answer questions. This is all great stuff in finding great tenant buyers, because they're seeing how they respond to you. So I had this one time where I had a phone call with this guy, and we met at the house, and the phone call went well. He initially qualified, and we met at the house, and I could tell that he was, I don't know how to describe it, but there was just something off in how we related to each other, right? And so it finally dawned on me, this guy is trying to take control of this meeting and this conversation. Now keep in mind, this is your property, or this is your rent-own deal. You need to remain in control of the property. It doesn't mean you need to be a bull in a china shop, but you are always guiding the conversation where it needs to go. And so I just found that this guy, he's like, well, I'll have my lawyer draw up some paperwork. It's like, okay, inside I'm going, 9.9 times out of 10, that paperwork will not work. Most lawyers don't know how to do rent-own deals successfully. meaning that they don't understand some of the in and outs of working with a bank specifically for these types of deals, all that sort of stuff. But so inside I'm going, okay, well, I've got the paperwork. Why don't we go over my paperwork and they can take you? No, I want to go to my lawyer. It's like, okay, this is not someone who I want to work with for 3 years if this is how it's starting off. Because when you're meeting with someone and they are interested in your house, they need your assistance for getting into home ownership, you'd like to think that they're putting their best foot forward, right? It's kind of like the first date, everything's all nice and everything. And if it's already off to a bad start, it's just like, no, this is not working. So that's what happens when you get to meet with people and you dialogue through this stuff, because you get to see their personality and if you're compatible with them. Because up front, it's pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Relationship heavy. There's a lot of going back and forth while you're getting this all together. Once they're in the house and everything's kind of going smoothly, you really don't have a lot of interaction. I mean, I've got some clients that I have not seen for over a year, but everything's going well. I was at their property and their son was there, but they weren't there, and so that's going well. If you've got someone that isn't going well, you don't want to have that relationship into 3 years, because that's going to be exhausting for you and it's probably going to fail in the end. So you're walking them through the house, and again, kind of, they always want to start in the kitchen, right? And as an investor, when I look at the house, I always want to start in the basement. I want to look at the foundation. I want to look at the utility room, how many amp their service is, what their heating and cooling material is. But tenant buyers typically want to start in the kitchen. That's fine. So we do that, show them the bedrooms, the bathroom. Then we move downstairs, and it always inevitably works out that we kind of end in the utility room or whatever. And it's kind of like, they've kind of asked all their questions about the house. And I said, okay, so do you guys have any questions about how the rent-to-own program works? Right? Because they've had a couple days since we talked, and they will have more questions. And so we'll do that there, but I don't like to stay in the basement. I don't like to stay in the utility room, right? So it's like, I'll ask that question and I'll say, oh, that's a good question. Why don't we head back up to the kitchen where it's brighter and stuff and more roomy, and let's talk about there. So you go back up and you explain the program, and then I've got a sheet that I give them, not this one, but it's more of a promotional sheet that explains the rent-to-own program on one side, and then the other side is the qualifying material. So that stuff will include everything from, proof of job, proof of income, T4 or pay slips, a credit score report, all that sort of stuff, and say, these are what we need from you to move forward. And so ultimately, you're always trying to get this tenant buyer to the next step. Now, I'm starting to get into qualifying. I don't want to do that today. I want to talk about tenant buyers and finding great tenant buyers. So now what happens is, with these tenant buyers in the house, you've got to meet them. You find out a lot about them, right? You ask an open-ended question and then you just shut up. Just let them talk. Now, that's within reason. Some people will take up your whole hour or longer, and they end up chatting about stuff that has nothing to do. You got to cut that off. You got to keep it back, because you want to, you got to respect your own time, but you want to respect their time as well. And you probably have other tenant buyers outside waiting to come in. And that's the asterisk that I wanted to talk about, which I'm going to come back to. But so at the end of this process, you found out a ton of information about them. You've shown them what their next steps are. And really, their next steps are to start submitting their qualifying materials. And basically, what you're doing is you're pre-qualifying them for the bank. Okay, I'll stop at that. Now, what happens is, you can go back and think about these people and think about, yeah, they seem like good people. They verified some stuff for me. It's verbal. Sometimes they will bring some stuff ahead of time. Like, they will bring, I would say, 1 in 15 tenant buyers will come to that meeting prepared with some stuff, even though I haven't even asked for it. Now, because I don't typically ask for it, because I don't like, I want to make the process smooth and simple for them, right? The first is the elevator pitch, then you meet for coffee, then you show them some materials, and you want to keep their interest momentum building. If you give them too much stuff up front, they'll get overwhelmed. It's like, okay, when we meet, could you bring this? A lot of people don't even know where to find, their notice of assessment from their taxes or their taxes. They don't even know where to find it. So if I'm making an obstacle too difficult for them even to come to the first one, they're probably not even going to come. So you want to keep it simple, and you want to give just enough information to get to the next meeting. Because I found this with investors, I found this with tired and frustrated landlords, I found this with tenants. You give them too much information, their eyes glaze over, and you lose them, right? A confused consumer doesn't purchase. A confused investor doesn't invest. A confused tenant buyer won't become your tenant buyer. So you want to keep it simple. So the asterisk that I keep talking about is hopefully my ad is generating multiple inquiries. And so rather than saying to these tenant buyers, okay, what time works for you? And they say, well, Saturday at 10 a.m. It's like, okay, Saturday 10 a.m. I'll meet you there. And someone else says they can meet, Sunday at 2. Okay, I'll go Sunday, meet you at 2. So I'm running all over the place. And this is how I started out. I did start out running all over the place. And half the time people don't even show up. So what I learned was that I want to batch my meetings with tenant buyers. And so what I'm looking for is 1 or 2 pre-qualified tenant buyers to show up at, Saturday at 1 o'clock. And anybody else who shows any interest, I'll just say, hey, I can meet you Saturday at 1 o'clock. And if I start to get like more than 8 inquiries, then I will spread that time slot a little bit more. Like, so someone will say, well, 1 o'clock doesn't work. Could I come at, 12:45? Sure, no problem. And so I want to batch these all together. So I'm going there once on that day. Hopefully for the weekend, I'm only going once to the property. And now I've got, supply and demand issue. I've got different tenant buyers bumping into each other as they're coming or going, and they see that other people are interested. And so, we'll have a family going in and they're interested, and another family coming out saying, oh, I really love that kitchen, or that makes sense. Or you might have people going out going, not a chance. Hopefully you do a good presentation. That doesn't happen. But for me, that works really well because it helps motivate people, because you want to find out what motivates people. And in a minute, I'm going to show you my rent-own client avatars that I created so that I know exactly who my target audience is, so that I'm not all over the place and just doing, gunshot and missing the target. So this has worked really well to have, multiple people within a time frame. There's an energy. People are excited. They want to see the property. They're looking for a place. They need a place. And I will even show the property to people that I'm not even sure if they're qualified at this point, because I can still qualify them. But now I know that I've got 2 families that are pre-qualified, like pre-qualified, meaning that they've got enough income. They say, like, I believe them that they've got enough income, and I believe them that they've got a down payment that I'm asking for. So that is a beautiful marketing trick to get as many people at the property at a window of time, 15 minutes, half an hour, depending on how many people. I've had as many as, 20 plus people say that they're going to come within an hour, maybe 90-minute window. Only half of them show up typically. I have had it where almost everybody shows up. That's rare because people will, they'll get busy with shopping or whatever. But if I can get, these people coming at that time frame, it just works really well. Okay, just to back up, the purpose of this call is how to find great tenant buyers. So I've told you how to find them at first, through advertising, do quick qualification over the phone or text. Hopefully you can get a phone call with them. And then you want to show them the property, or if it's a tenant first transaction that you want to do and then you find them a house, basically you meet them for coffee and you explain your program, you show them all the qualifying materials, and you listen to why they want to do this, and you go on that process. And that's a much more individualized attention. And you typically want to have those people put some money down right away, a small amount that just shows they're serious, like $500. I can't remember what I call it, but it's a application fee, and it's just to weed out people. Because if you are focusing on tenant first, you're going to meet lots of people, and you're going to find a lot of those people just really aren't serious to ultimately pull the trigger. And you don't want to spend a lot of time on that. So when you're starting out, you don't need to charge a fee because you want to get the experience in, you want to get the reps in. You can start with a fee if you want to. I didn't. So what that meant was I got to meet with more people, because now I'll meet with less tenant buyers because they're not willing to cut me a check or e-transfer me $500 for the application fee up front, right? I'll do that at the meeting. When I meet with them, it's like, okay, here's the next steps. You need to submit, first of all, start with submitting your application fee, and you'll just weed out a ton of people, right? If you've got 20 prospective tenant buyers, you probably will get 2 to 5 of them who will actually send you that application fee. But then you go through that process with them, and I won't go to steps of finding the house because that's not our topic today. So with that meeting with them, you're going, yeah, these are people I really want to work with. Or you're going, these are not people I want to work with. So your application fee probably just went up to $1,000 or maybe even $1,500, right? One of my students, and actually one of my coaches, has done a great way to do this with, it's Kyle, for those of you who know Kyle. So they do both. They do house first and tenant first. And recently they posted an ad saying, along the lines of the tenant first, is like, we're accepting 6 applications for our next rent-to-own home, where we work with you and we find you your dream home, right? So there's that scarcity mentality right there. It's like, oh, they're only accepting 6 people, 6 families to work with this year or in this next season or whatever it is. So that's cool, because then you're going to get people going, okay, I'm really serious about this, Kyle, and yeah, let's meet. Okay, yeah, I'll send you the application fee right away. So that's a great strategy to do that. So when I'm working with these people, some of the key things that I'm looking for, is how do they communicate with me? Because this is someone that you're going to communicate with heavy up front, a little bit over the 3 years. If things go sideways at any time, like someone loses a job and they can't pay, you're going to communicate with them more. And then at the end of the deal, when they go to qualify, you're going to work with them again. So is this someone that I want to work with for, the next 3 years? And you find that out when you're working with them. How do they communicate with you? Like, do they never look you in the eyes, or are they pretty straightforward with you and you get a good vibe with them? Like, so next week for this live, I'm going to do, how to qualify them, and I'm going to talk through that. But it's like, how do they, do they give you the information in a timely fashion, or do you need to hunt them down? Right? Because if you need to hunt them down, they're probably going to maintain that level of communication, right? So these are all things that I'm looking for. I'm looking for, Do they come from a stable home? And if, by the way, you've got questions, just pop them in the chat, and then I can come back to these questions. Just be specific about what your question is about. So yeah, how do they communicate with me? How do they communicate with each other? If they're with their partner, or how do they communicate with each other? Do they get frustrated easily with each other? Do they yell? I've had people like they were pissed at each other. And it's just like, whoa, is this a one-time incident, or is this the regular? It's like this is all information because I'm going to be working with them. What's their job history? Have they worked in the same industry? They can have a couple different jobs, but if they're all in the same industry for all those jobs, that's good. Are they without work? Are they self-employed? These are all things that you want to find out, ahead of time. Can they follow instructions? Right? Okay, we're going to meet, Saturday at 1:00. Okay, great. Just, we'll see you then. And they don't show up and they don't text you. Okay, that's not a good sign. If they text me later in the afternoon and say, I'm so sorry I missed that, blah, 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 awesome. But if you can't meet them, they don't show up for an appointment, that's not a good sign. Can they follow instructions? Can they send in the information that you're giving them? Because you want them to jump through some hoops. You don't want to make it so easy that they don't realize. Because, as you know, when you go to purchase a house and get a mortgage, whether if it's through a bank or private mortgage, you got to jump through a bunch of hoops. And so you don't want to make this process too easy, because then they're not going to be realistic. And so I need them to send in this information. It's like, I've got this one couple right now that I'm working with, and it's like, I've got everything, and it's like, oh, I need one more thing. And I do need it, but it's also a test to see how responsive they are. And it's like, okay, I need you guys to pull your own credit scores and then submit them to me. Great. So I got them the next day. That's a very good sign. These are people that are taking it seriously, and I probably want to work with them. So after doing this for a while, I came up with three avatars that basically describe who I think are the best clients that I want to be working with, and then now I can target them. So I go through a whole bunch of questions to discover these avatars, and partly what helped was I looked at my existing clients and I kind of broke down the demographics of them. Are they married, divorced, do they have kids, what's their age, income levels, all that sort of stuff. So I came up with three avatars through all these questions. And some of the most important questions here are, what are their concerns about home ownership? Because this is what will keep your tenant buyers up at night before they get in your program. It's like, I want to get a house, but I can't afford it, or a consumer proposal, any number of things. And so you want to figure out what people's pain points are. The same with investors, same with title and frustrated landlords, same with your tenant buyers. What are their pain points? The biggest one is they can't buy a house right now, and you can help them solve that problem. That's huge. And so you want to help them envision what it's going to be like being in this house. And so I came up with these avatars. And so this is my number one avatar. And I call this couple Young Family Fernando. Okay, I just came up with this. And so common characteristics of these, like of this avatar. And, I've got this up on my wall so that when I'm writing my ads, I'm writing to them. I look at these pictures. So I used to work in a radio station eons ago. And in the control room, the main studio, they'd have a picture of their target audience, right? And this was back in Vancouver. And so that always stuck in my mind. So when the on-air talent was sitting there at his control board. It's changed a lot now, and the mics go hot and they go live. They're talking to their avatar. They were big pictures of two different people, a man and a woman, and like in a specific age. And that's who they were talking to. So then when they were, promoting stuff or whatever, they were talking to those people. So it really helped them engage and connect with their audience. So when I'm writing my ads and stuff like that, I'm looking at my avatars. And so the characteristics of this avatar, mid to late 30s, 1 to 3 kids, probably dual income earners, credit challenges, possible health challenges affecting their credit in the past, stuck in a bad credit cycle. That's a very common one. Just their credit score sucks and they're over leveraged. Their debt servicing ratios are way too high, all this sort of stuff. But they've got decent income and they've got a down payment. Okay. They can't get a mortgage and they want security and stability of owning their own home. So these are the common characteristics of my number one avatar. So I write ads to that, and typically, surprise, surprise, my clients are one of these 3 avatars. And so that's number one avatar. Number 2 avatar is a young couple, Carl. And so this is, 30-ish, 0 kids, dual income earners. They've got credit challenges and they can't get a mortgage. Any number of things. Oftentimes it can be newer to Canada, as well as just having no financial education but wanting, to get into home ownership. They oftentimes, these first 2 avatars have never owned a home before. And, 50% of the time they come from homes that they grew up in that were always rented, right? So this home ownership thing is a pretty foreign thing to them. So we're helping educate them. And so, the other things with these guys, obviously you can't get a mortgage. They want security and stability of owning their own home as they begin to think about starting a family or just getting settled. And the Western culture dream is to, get a house, 2 cars, and 1.5 kids, right? So these guys fit that demographic, and they want a house, and they don't want to be in a rental anymore. So my third client is starting again, Alice, and this is a couple, usually in their late 40s. They've got teenage kids or young adult kids that are either living at home or not living at home. They're, they're maybe going to school or they're living with friends or whatever, but they're dual income earners. Obviously, they've got credit challenges. They can't get a mortgage due to poor credit. Health is a big thing. Relationship breakdown is a big thing. So when I'm looking at this avatar, relationship breakdown is a very common one. They got divorced. It killed their credit. They had to sell their house. And now they're starting to get back on their feet again. They're kind of over some of the hardest emotional part of that. And they can start to think clearly again about getting a nice home again and getting back into a house. And oftentimes, starting again, Alice has owned a home before. So these guys will ask a different set of questions up front than someone who's never owned a home before. They'll, oftentimes my first 2 avatars will rarely ask, what is the price of the home? They're more looking at how much is, the monthly payments. How much do I have to put down now? Okay, I think we can do that. And obviously I'm qualifying them. I'm not just counting on them. But starting in Alice, they will be asking, okay, what's the home price? So a little bit different discussion. And, so those are my 3 avatars. And those help me get finding and then ultimately qualifying great tenant buyers. So the purpose of today's call was how to find great tenant buyers. I hope that you found some value in this, and you found at least one nugget that you can implement today. You know, if you don't have an ad up, put an ad up. If you've got an ad up, you're talking with people, something that you learned today, or create your avatar. Who's your target client? Are you going to be house first? Like you've got a house that you can rent own, or you're flipping a house and you turn it into a rent own, or, you know, you've got a buddy who's got a house that they're renovating and you're borrowing their house to try to do rent own. That's a great way to get started, right? So we can talk more about that. Or if you're doing tenant first, is like put an ad out there, get talking with people. So if you're interested in more of this, in my community, so creativeinvestor.ca is my website, but it's also my community. So when you go to creativeinvestor.ca, you'll see our about page, which kind of talks about it. But on the top there, you'll see there's a bunch of tabs: community, classroom, calendar. Those are the things up there. Go to community, check out the conversations that we're having. That's where I think a lot of the magic happens, because my students interact with each other. We've got 2 students who recently posted ads of their property that they're showing. You get good feedback, you connect with each other. But then in there is also my program, 6 Weeks to Rent Own Cash Flow, which in 2 weeks, we're starting a brand new cohort of 6 students going through all of this together. So what that means is that, you know, like right now, you're learning stuff and, you know, you might pop a question in here. So far, I don't see any questions, but like I said, I'm on my phone today. I'm not on the computer. So that's a little bit frustrating for me. But in the community, you learn something. You know, we've got our weekly live Zoom calls and we're talking about stuff. We're going through the content, asking questions. Like the last 2 weeks, we've evaluated numbers on some specific properties. And so you get to see how people are running their numbers, the profits they make. All that happens in our community and in our classroom. And so if you're interested in joining the 6 Weeks Rental and Cash Flow, reach out to me and we can talk. You can go to the website, find out more information about it. And yeah, that's what I've got for today. So I'll leave this on for just a few more minutes to see if there's any questions. I'll also log on to my computer here and see if it is live there and if there's questions there. Yeah, so it's not showing live on the Facebook page here. But that's okay. We improvised, and I thank you for those of you who jumped on today. I'm here. My name's Cam. If you want to chat with me more about it, you got questions for what I talked about today, please just reach out. Happy to chat with you. We can jump on a call if you want to discuss and see if this is a strategy that works for you or potentially works for you. I love helping people get from here, their current circumstances, to here, their goal. What's your goal in the next year? What do you want to see happen in the next 6 months? So I was just chatting with one of my students, and their goal is to do, was it 3 or 5? Their goal was to do 3 new rent-own deals in this next year. Okay, that's awesome. Let's back it up and let's get very specific on what do you need to do together? Okay, so are you doing tenant first or are you doing house first? Okay, I want to do house first. Okay, are you going to buy them or yourself, or are you getting investors? I want to work with TFLs. I want to find TFLs. Okay, this is great. Very focused. So it's working backwards. You want to find TFLs. Now you got to find TFLs, right? Last week I talked specifically about the TFL funnel. That's how you find TFLs. So this student is like going to that funnel. We talked specifically about it. And they're putting up ads, they're making phone calls, they're finding and hunting for TFLs to get a property, and they're going to start showing it to prospective tenant buyers. Okay, very clear on the goal, working all the way back to what can you do today. I can put out ads for TFLs, which I show you in my course, very specific ads. You call for rent by owners, for sale by owners, you put in the reps, you get a meeting with them, you see a house, you make an offer on the house with your contracts, you lock down the house with a $100 check. You find you've already been working with tenant buyers because you put in ads out there. You got tenant buyers saying, hey, you text, hey Bobby, I've got this great house coming up on the market. Here's the address. I can't show it to you yet, but here's the address. Here's some stuff about it. You're building momentum. You're building excitement. You get them the property. Maybe they like it. Maybe they don't. But you've got experience now. You've got experience showing the house. You start advertising this house. You show it to, you make 10 appointments for Saturday at 1 o'clock. 5 of them show up. One of them texts and says, sorry, I couldn't make it. You keep texting with them. Maybe those are the ones. And you keep working with them until you get them in the property, you sign the contracts, and that's how you do it. So next week, I'm going to be talking about how to qualify them, because that's some very specific information that you need to know. And it's very important for success, because anybody can put a person in a house with a heartbeat and a check for $10,000. But the deal's probably going to fail if you don't qualify them properly. So next week, we're going to talk specifically about that. So cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me on Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next Saturday. Talk soon. Bye.